Hi everyone! I'm so excited to be doing my first live. Slightly terrified as well. So I'm going to be doing this once a week, or trying to do this once a week, and just talk about all things freelancing, Upwork, entrepreneurship, business, e-commerce, digital nomadism if you want, as I do have some experience there. But this week we're going to kick things off by talking about Upwork. How to use it to kickstart your freelance career, get more consistent projects, use it to scale your business, all sorts of fun stuff. And because this is my first one, I already went ahead and asked for questions ahead of time, and I've been active in some Facebook groups. So I gathered a bunch of questions that I'm just going to start talking about here. And then if you have questions, just leave a comment below and I'll answer that live as well. And before we get started, I would also love to know where you're watching from, where you're tuning in from. Leave a comment below and I will check this after the live too. So if you're watching this not live, leave a comment. I love engaging on these, on any videos and anything that I post. So just let me know. Let's get started. I just have some notes here from the previous questions that I'm going to start with. So, Colette in a Facebook group was saying, Upwork is really the absolute worst for freelancers. Most jobs want to pay legitimately for like $25 to $50 a project. I've had people try to not pay me at all after a project was completed. It took over a month to get a low payment, not to mention now they charge the freelancer even to apply to a gig that they're likely to not even get. Please don't waste your time and energy. It basically takes advantage of it and steals from freelancers. I can't say enough bad things about it. She said, I don't accept lowball offers. That's almost all there is. If there's any high ones, there's so many people applying to it. My rates are $30 an hour. She's a graphic designer. She's only had 2 gigs off there, and the others were nightmares. And after changing it to where you have to make them pay to apply, she just deleted it. And not to mention, they take 20% of what you make. She says it's such a scam. And just to clarify, I went in Facebook groups ahead of time just asking people what their experience with Upwork has been, because I wanted to share more about my own experience, but also to help answer some questions and things that commonly come up with people's bad experiences and see if I can kind of help clarify how to avoid these kinds of things. So there's a lot of things Colette mentioned here. In general, the biggest thing I noticed here is that she mentioned she's applying at $30 an hour. And that's not necessarily bad, and to a lot of people that's a decent rate. But for a platform like Upwork, you are really wanting to charge more. So I definitely recommended to her to start raising her rates and try raising her rate, because when you're applying to jobs at like the $30 an hour range, there's tons of competition. Whereas if you raise your rate, even to 40 or 50, you automatically are kind of in a different level, like a different field there. So that's a big thing that really stood out from there. Especially if you're experienced in your skill set, it's definitely worth considering raising your rate instead of lowering and trying to compete. And there's just so many people and lower rates. I had a lot of different thoughts here on this. So in general, it sounds like her circumstances, she could have benefited maybe from more formal packages or processes for each project. I've definitely run into this in the past, especially when I was just starting out, where I had clients that weren't that great and projects that kind of went sour or projects that like dragged on forever. And part of the problem was that I didn't have processes in place and I didn't have any systems in place for projects. It was just kind of like, oh, sure, I'll help you with whatever. And then you're kind of just at their mercy to do whatever they want you to do. Whereas now I have a much more formalized approach with projects. Like, this is what I do, this is what I offer. And it's sped things up so much. And it helps really deal with situations where you might run into clients that want you to go above and beyond when it's not really in the scope of the project. And so you can fall back on like your contract and on what was originally quoted for the project to say, hey, this isn't what we really talked about. Like, I'm happy to help you further, but it's going to be extra, or we need to talk about this to figure out, what to do there. So that's definitely something I noticed from her comment there. Also with graphic design, especially, it's often that you're doing lots of different things for a client, so it can be really good to clarify and just get that more in writing to make it simpler so you're not running into issues of like, well, we didn't agree to this or we did agree to that. Definitely good to have a contract, and definitely good to have like a scope of work so that everyone's on the same page. In terms of her not getting paid, again, like having a simple contract, and also Upwork has a lot of ways to ensure that you get paid. I don't think people always know about these or use them well. For instance, with fixed price contracts, you are able to, or they ask and suggest that before you start work for a client, you want the client to fund the milestone. However you set up the project, whether it's milestones that are date-based or milestones that are based on, what's completed in the project, you ask clients to fund that before you start the work. So then if you finish the work, you can submit to get paid, and then if there's some sort of dispute, you have still submitted that in escrow. You're not like waiting for them to submit the payment, if that makes sense. So it's a lot easier there to work out disputes. Whereas if you just start on a fixed price project but they haven't funded it, then the chances of you getting paid are lower if it was a bad client, because there's nothing waiting in escrow. So Upwork's escrow system is really good there, and it does really protect you. Any times where I have run into issues, it was maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I did have to file a dispute with a client because I finished the project and she didn't want to pay. And Upwork was super understanding and great to work with, like Upwork support. And I think I ended up getting some of the payment, not all of it, because of just how it played out, but the whole process was really, really good. In terms of getting paid for hourly projects, they make it really, really easy. There's 2 different ways. So the first way is that you can get paid with their time tracking app. So you install it on your computer and it takes screenshots while you're working. And that is guaranteed payment. So if you're tracking hours while you're doing that, it's guaranteed, unless like if you let the tracker go for hours and forget about it, and then the client disputes like, oh, there's 3 extra hours here that I wasn't aware of. That can happen where the client can dispute your hours, but typically it doesn't happen. You can also submit hours manually depending on the project, which some people prefer if they don't want screenshots taken of their screen while they're working. And that can also be good. It does take a little bit longer to get paid if you're doing that route, where you have to kind of wait for the client to approve the hours, or it auto approves after a certain amount of time. But I've never had any problems with it. So it sounds like from Colette's situation that she just ran into some bad clients and some bad projects. And this doesn't surprise me, to be honest, because if you're at lower rates, it's going to be harder to find good clients. You're going to get a lot of people that are just starting their business. They maybe don't have business experience. They maybe don't quite know what they're doing yet. And so they're just kind of putting pieces together. And you're then part of that process for them of helping them figure out what they actually want to do in their business. So it's just really useful to have higher rates, and you can kind of cut out a lot of those people that aren't quite serious or people that don't really know what they want. I had a lot of thoughts on this. I made a bunch of notes ahead of time to make sure I didn't lose track too much. I love that she brought up Upwork fees. This is something I definitely wanted to touch on, and I'm really glad someone brought it up. A lot of people aren't a fan of Upwork's fees. There's a few different fees that you can pay and some that you have to pay. You can pay the fee to have a premium plan sort of thing with your freelancer profile. And I believe it does help you get shown more in search. You have access to some premium features, which I'm not sure of on the top of my hand, but you have access, I think, to more connects, some things like that. I've always just paid because it's been a no-brainer to me. I've used Upwork for my entire business for years, for getting clients and getting leads and getting work, and keeping payments really easy and secure on their platform. So to me, it's always been a no-brainer to pay to have access to a more premium plan, because it's always just worked, and it's never been crazy expensive. It's not like they're asking me to pay like $100 a month or $200 a month. It's like $15 maybe or $10 a month, and I get some connects or something with that. They've changed the plan and what's included multiple times over the years, so I'm not really quite sure where it's at anymore. But as far as the other fees, when people talk about the fees. This is what they usually are talking about not liking the most. Some people don't like paying that $10 a month. Again, to me, it's a no-brainer if you're making money on the platform. If you're going to make more than $10, and it's totally worth it to have access to, getting seen more in search or getting more connects so that you can apply to more projects. Like it's just part of business in that sense to me. But as far as the other fees go, the 20% fees is what people most of the time are talking about, but it's not 20%. And this is what a lot of people don't know. So it's 20% up to $500. So your first $500 with a client, you'll pay 20% to Upwork, which isn't great if you're taking on a lot of like $20, $30, $50 projects like Colette was talking about. It's just not sustainable at that point. You have to do so much onboarding to get a client. And then on top of that, to only be getting $15 or something instead of $20, which to me is still like insane. I would never take projects that low. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense. And even if you're doing something for $100, $200, $300, it is a good chunk. 20% is a big chunk. So I think what Upwork is doing is trying to incentivize people, both clients and freelancers, to take on bigger projects and to work more long-term. Obviously, as a freelancer, you don't always have control over this, and depending on how you structure your business and what types of projects you like to take on, it may not make the most sense to, it just depends, I guess, on your projects and what you like to do. So if you like to take on one-off projects, then of course, like, you can't just constantly get, long-term gigs, but for some people, long-term gigs are an option. So the fee after your first $500 with a client is 10% up to $10,000, I believe. And then after that, it's 5%. So that to me says that they're really trying to incentivize people taking on longer projects. And again, it's more from the freelancer side. You don't have control, but definitely something to keep in mind there. So if you are doing projects over $500, your fee drops to 10%. So it can be really worth it then to try and find projects that are $750 or $1,000 or $1,500, something like that, which there are quite a bit of those on Upwork. And this applies as well to hourly projects. So same thing, $500, up to $500 is 20%. And then off of that, after that, it's 10% and then 5%. So that can be really useful if you're just taking on an hourly project where you're not quite sure where it's going to go, but you're just going to track hours for a while, for a few months. After you get that first 500 out of the way, then you don't have much to worry about. That 10% is still a chunk, but it's significantly less. And especially if that's going to turn into like a more consistent project, then, it's great to not be worrying about that as an overhead there. So okay, I hope that makes sense. I know that was a lot to kind of dive into right off the bat. So now I'm going to move on to question number 2. We'll see how long this goes. I was going to try and keep this to maybe 20-ish minutes, but it might go a little bit longer because I do have a bunch of questions here. So the second question is from Rhea. And Rhea is actually a friend of mine, which was awesome to be able to have her asking some questions and know more about her situation. So she said, when it was free to apply to jobs, I was sending multiple proposals a day and still wasn't seeing any results, or wasn't seeing many results. I did get a good amount of responses, but it always came down to choosing someone cheaper. Pretty much all of the work that I get through Upwork is less than $500, so the fees really hurt. I've added an upcharge to all my services in Upwork to account for the fees, but now that you have to pay to apply, I rarely use it and only apply when sent an interview by the client. I have 100% rating and was top rated, but I lost the status since I rarely work on it now. Then I asked her some further clarifying questions. I do know more about her situation. She's a web designer, kind of similar to me, graphic designer, does some photography as well. So I can speak directly to that specific field. But in terms of some of her questions, it was some of the same thing that I was talking about earlier, of how when you're taking on projects less than $500, the fees really do hurt. And so you do need to be looking for projects above that, kind of across the board. Obviously, if you're just starting out and your rate is maybe $10 an hour, $15 an hour because you literally have no work and no work experience, and you're using Upwork as a platform to learn and get paid while you're learning, which is something for a whole nother video. That's, it's a different approach there, and it's definitely still worth taking projects that are maybe less than $500 if that's your situation. But if you're experienced and you're using Upwork to get consistent leads, or if you're trying to use it to start freelancing, maybe you used to work for a company before and now you want to try and freelance on your own, then you do want to be making more than $500 a project, because it only turns out to $400. And because in that situation, you're also looking for more consistent work and using it for your business, not just like one-off side gig kind of thing. So this is a tough one because there are lots of projects above $500, especially in the web design, graphic design space. So it comes down to just applying a lot and being consistent, writing really good proposals, having a really good profile, and then over time you will land those projects. It's just bound to happen. There was something else I wanted to say here. Oh, she mentioned also about paying to apply. So this is actually a really recent update where Upwork used to have it when you had a paid plan that you got a certain number of connects, which are these little tokens, so to speak, that you can use to apply to projects. So bigger projects often cost more connects. So if I'm applying to like a $2,000 project, it'll probably cost me 6 connects or something like that. Whereas something that's like a $400 project might cost me 1 or 2. So they used to have it where you got a certain number of connects with your paid plan and it rolled over every month. But they recently changed it where you have to buy connects in bulk. So you can buy, I think it's like 80 or 100 connects for $12 or something like that. And then from there, you can apply to projects using those connects, same situation. So it's, a lot of people don't like that format, but I think it's great. Again, like I think it's really good that you have to pay, and beyond what I was talking about earlier in the sense that it just makes sense as a business, like there's a bunch of different reasons I think why it makes sense actually. So paying for connects, I think a big reason they do this is so that you don't have people that are just constantly applying to everything, which is good because if people were able to apply to everything for free all the time, clients would have hundreds of proposals and they would not be able to find the best candidates. So if you can see the value in paying for connects or in paying for a paid plan, then it's going to show through in what projects you apply to and then what gets through to clients. So it's good, I think, to not bombard clients with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of proposals. I've hired on Upwork. I could say from experience that would be kind of a nightmare to sort through. And I know that you would also get a ton of just generic copy-pasted proposals. Whereas when you have to pay for connects, you're going to be a lot more considerate of, how you're going to be using those. So it makes you think twice before you send out a proposal if you're like, oh, this is going to cost me 8 connects. On the other hand, the other take or the other stance you can take is just buying them and not worrying too much about it, especially if you're using it for your business. Because if you're getting $1,000 projects, $2,000 projects, consistently making a few $1,000s a month, to pay $20 here or there for connects so that you can apply to more projects is a no-brainer because it's just getting you access to the projects. So this is the other thing that I really wanted to talk about with Upwork in terms of paying in general, is that people often have this complaint of like, why do you have to pay? Because or pay to play or pay for any of the fees, and it's such a rip-off to people. But what they don't realize is that you have instant access to all of these clients. These are essentially warm leads that you don't have to find, which is crazy. Like, if you have any experience trying to build your business outside of platforms, whether you're using Facebook or Instagram or social media, whatever you're trying to do, you have to spend so much time engaging with your audience, trying to grow an audience, creating content, trying to partner with other people, getting on podcasts or doing interviews, whatever it is that you're trying to do. it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, let alone money if you're doing paid advertising, to try and build your business just to get leads. So if you have access to legitimately warm leads, these are people that have a project that they need done. They're not just like random people that you're finding that you might want to work with. They actually need something now. They're ready to hire someone, and you can just contact them by paying maybe $10 for a few different tokens to send in a proposal. It is silly. And then having to pay 20% of the project fee, or 10% depending on how big the project is, in order to do that project on a platform, to me just makes so much sense. If it means that I can book $5,000 or $10,000, whatever amount of projects, because I have access to that many people and I can send out so many proposals, it just makes sense and it's totally worth it. I'm saving so much time, not having to try and do my own marketing, not having to try and build outside of Upwork. Yeah, that's just my opinion. I think it just makes a ton of sense. It's so worth it to not have to put all that time in to doing your own marketing. That being said, doing your own marketing is also great. I think there's a ton of value in building your brand outside of platforms. But if you're just trying to get more consistent leads, or want access to more warm leads, or if you're just starting out and don't really know where to start, like, it's a really, really good place to start. So, oh man, this is gonna take a while. We'll see. I might cut this off kind of short and come back with more next week. Okay, so third question is from, let's go with this one. So this is from Allie. She said, Upwork is great and it's how I've gotten most of my freelance work over the past year. However, I will still say lately I've had to put in nearly 40 to 50 proposals before someone even contacts me. I'm not sure if it's because of the holidays or because it's a slow time, but all the proposals I've put in over the past 2 months I've checked on and the jobs have not been hired for yet. So it's absolutely possible I'm doing something wrong or not doing enough, but it could just be downtime on a platform. I do wonder if anyone else has had this issue. Okay, so I love this. So it's great to hear someone else that's having some, good experience on Upwork and using it to build their business. And, it's great to see that there's more people that can use to I guess, further their freelance career. So what Allie was saying was 40 to 50 proposals before she's put in nearly 40 to 50 proposals before someone even has contacted her. So what happens here is, if you're not familiar with Upwork, if you put in proposals, clients can't, I'm just like totally losing track here. Once you put in proposals, clients can contact you, but you can't contact them. You can't follow up until they contact you, if that makes sense. So you send it out, and you have to wait for them to get back to you. The only exception to this is if they send you an invitation. So if they're like, hey, I think you'd be a good fit, please apply to my job, you apply. By them sending you an invitation, it started a conversation in the Upwork system. So you're able to follow up. You're able to send them a message, you're able to check in and just see how things are going. Whereas if you just send a proposal without an invitation, there's no message thread, there's nothing for you to follow up on, so you just have to wait. So what she's saying is she's put in nearly 40 to 50 proposals over the past 2 months or so, and the jobs haven't been hired yet. So a couple things here. This does happen. Definitely does happen with Upwork. I think it happens a lot actually, where people put out jobs and then either the job changes, or they're not quite sure, or they're just not ready to hire, or they haven't gone through all the proposals, and so it's taking them a long time. So there's a lot of different things that can happen where you're just not hearing anything back, even if you submit proposals. So that's definitely something to be aware of, even though it's still just worth it to send them out no matter what, because you don't know who you're going to hear back from. All the proposals she put in over 2 months, she checked on the jobs, they haven't been hired for. So what she's saying is you can go on Upwork to the different job postings to see how many people have been hired for the project. And if people have been hired, you have a sense of like, oh, maybe they're not looking to hire, or they're just keeping it open just in case. But you can also see if they haven't. So again, if they haven't hired, it could be for any number of reasons. maybe they're getting cold feet, or they're just rethinking it, or who knows. In terms of not getting work but having put in that many proposals, this is a tough one because there's a lot of different reasons she might not be getting responses. I did talk with her further in the chat and got more info about her situation and gave her some tips for proposal writing. I would say that is one of the most common things I see, is that people send out all these proposals and then they don't hear anything back and they're like, what's wrong? Like, I don't know what to do. So that's when I suggest, one, still send out proposals. Like, yes, you've put in a lot of work sending out 40 to 50 proposals, but it's good to keep sending them out. Like, that's the only way you're gonna get projects, especially if you can't follow up with people. So you've got to just keep doing it. Second, it's a really good time if you've sent maybe even 10 or 20 or 30 and you're not hearing anything back, that's a good time to start tweaking your proposals and start adding in different snippets, changing your format, or just changing it up to see what works and what doesn't. So a couple key things there that I've found that have really helped proposals is, or a few things. One is that you always need to be bringing value, and you need to be talking about the client's end problem, end goal. You know, what are they really going for? Yes, they want a new website, but they're trying to get sales. That's why they want a new website design. Or they need copywriting done, but again, they're trying to get more sales. So if you can gear your proposals to talking about solving the client's bigger problems and seeing bigger results for them outside of just, oh yeah, I write good copy, and saying, I write copy that helps clients convert and that helps people see more, get more customers, or connect more with their audience, whatever it is. That right off the bat, I think, sets you apart as more of a professional, and also as, you know, delivering more value to them, not just, oh yeah, I write good copy. The third thing there, these are more just like tactics, but I definitely recommend to people all the time, try recording videos instead of writing out your whole proposal. The reason for that, or a couple reasons for that, is that it's super personable and people can right off the bat get a sense for you as a person, what it might be like to work with you. And it's a little bit more vulnerable, you know, if you're recording a quick video, whether it's with your phone or with software, whatever it is, you're taking time to do that for them. It's vulnerable and it shows that you're serious. So yeah, I think it's a really, really good thing. Most of the times when I send out little videos, it's often for projects I'm really serious about. If I'm just kind of putting out proposals just to kind of get more out there, I won't always do it. But if it's something I really want to work on, I will definitely record a video, because maybe 80% of the time I hear back, even if it's just, oh, thank you so much for sending the video. We really, really appreciated that. And that was really helpful for us. We decided to go in a different direction. I almost always get a response, even if they don't want to move forward. So it's definitely worth trying. The second thing that I've actually been trying recently, which has really, really helped in terms of getting contact with people, is putting a link to book a call. So I use Calendly, but you can use any other kind of appointment scheduling software, where you just put a link in the bottom, like, of your proposal saying like, hey, I would love to talk more about your project with you. Would you be open for a free 10-minute quick call over the next couple days? And the reason, there's a couple things there. One is that I always say that it's a quick call, and I think that's part of why it's done so well, is because if you're saying like, oh, I really want to talk on the phone, can you hop on for 30 minutes? People are like, yeah, like, I don't know if I'm that serious, and they're not quite sure if they want to move forward yet. Whereas if it's just 10 minutes, most of the time people are like, yeah, sure, I've got 10 minutes. Like, that's fine. I can do that on my way to work or whatever. So I get a ton of people that just book a call. And the great thing there is that you have a way to follow up. So a lot of times I'll get people that book calls that don't actually message me back on Upwork. They're just like, oh yeah, I saw your link to schedule a call and I really wanted to talk with you. And so then we have a call, and then even if we didn't, talk about everything on the call, I can follow up and be like, hey, that was really great. If you want to move forward, let's talk about your project even further. Like, let's schedule another call to like go really deep on everything. Or Here's some recommendations for other things that might work for you, but how we can move forward. So it's a really, really easy way to just get people in the door, and just be able to contact them, because that's the biggest kind of bottleneck with Upwork and sending out proposals, is that you can't contact people after. So yeah, I know I'm being a little bit long-winded here, but I want to make sure I talk about everything enough and explain things well enough. So I'm going to just answer one more, I think, unless any of you guys have questions. Nope. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll just answer one more from these ones I had written down and then save the rest for next week. Okay, so let's talk about something that's not going to be too long here. Okay, this is a great one. So Maria says, I've used Upwork for 4 years, but then realized that it has a glass ceiling for growth. The client base there is so diversified that you hardly build your reputation because lots of projects are one-off deals. It gave me amazing opportunities for professional development though. Again, I kind of talked to Maria more to get more of a sense for her situation and what she was talking about. And a big thing she was talking about here was it's not a great place to build your brand. And it's not a great place to build your business in that sense if you're trying to establish yourself as an authority in a certain niche or field or industry or something like that. There's not really a way to do it on Upwork, but it's just not what it's meant for. So I've actually experienced this as well in other ways in terms of glass ceilings. So as you scale your rates and raise your rates over time, you can experience this depending on your field, and it just takes more tweaking to try and see what works in terms of getting people to respond to proposals or getting people to book at higher rates. There's lots of different things that you can do there. I experienced this with design and branding around, I guess at a few different break points. So I first experienced it when I raised my rates around $60 an hour. Kind of felt like, oh, this is, maybe this is as high as I can go. I'm not able to book as many projects. But then once I started getting projects, I raised it to 95. And then that was another really big one that that feels like a really big number, I think, to a lot of people. And so that took some more time for me to establish myself as more of an expert and be able to get projects at that level more consistently. And I actually did lower it back down to like 75, 79, 85, just kind of experimenting for a little bit. And that worked great. Actually, that range I think worked really well because it wasn't as high as something like 95. That perception there was that it's not as expensive, but you're still getting a professional, when you're paying like $70 an hour. And then just recently I raised it to like $125 an hour and then lowered it down to 95 again, and experienced the same thing where I got interest at 125, but not always people that were willing to book, and then lowered it down to 95 and got more people that were willing to book. So I think it's just kind of this game of experimenting with it as you go. Again, I know what Maria was talking about here was more building your brand, but you can experience these sort of glass ceilings that you can break through actually on Upwork, just in terms of price. I will say in terms of building your brand, like it's just not really meant for that. It's made more for just, to appeal to the masses. Like anyone that has a project that they need done, they can post it and someone will respond that can help them. And it's just that simple. Whereas if you're wanting to build your brand and establish yourself in your industry, in your niche, in your style, whatever it is, then there's lots of platforms where you can do that. You can have your own website and Instagram, social media, but I don't think it needs to be exclusive. This is something that I see people kind of talk about a lot in a lot of different industries where they're, just sold on one platform, and it's not about just the platform. It's about your business as a whole. Excuse me. So I think, things like Upwork can definitely be a piece of the puzzle, just like Instagram and social media and Facebook and whatever can be a piece of the puzzle in serving your business and helping you build your business. But it's not going to be the whole thing. So for instance, I pretty much just use Upwork for lead gen, and I get it to get warm leads. I get it to, just get warm leads. And I talk to people and I talk to clients. Sometimes they become part of my audience and they follow me on social media, which is cool. And sometimes they book projects, which is great. And sometimes, I refer them to someone else that's a better fit. It just depends, but it's definitely a big piece of getting work for me. Whereas, it's not really a big piece of building my brand overall, because that takes place more through social media. So I get, more people from social media that are interested in working with me specifically for my style because they see that there. That being said, I actually have had a lot of people on Upwork that, and I know this is maybe more exclusive to design because I'm a designer, that they end up wanting to work with me because of the style that I have, because it is a little bit harder to find on Upwork. So there is some room to stand out a bit on Upwork if you go all in on whatever you're doing, whether that's having really specific packages or whether that's having a really specific style as a designer or as a writer and just showcasing that well. There's a lot of people on Upwork that are really generic. So if you can stand out by just niching down to one thing, that can really, really help you stand out. So yeah, I hope all of that helps. I know this was a lot to talk about and go through. I'm really excited to keep doing this in the future though. So I'm going to answer some more of these questions about Upwork next week, as well as any other questions you guys have about freelancing. So if you have any questions, just feel free to leave a comment or message me later. Yeah, thanks for joining. Bye.